thank you all for having me here, and I mean for having me here and now, but also for having me here in this exceptional department. It's the best time of my life, I have to say. So, yeah, happy to be here and happy to maybe give you a look into the research of the last maybe 30 years. There's a little bit of history in there, but I'm trying to get to the new stuff as fast as possible. So I learned a lot from the first talks about the German attitude. So we are usually those who think that we can make others do what we want if we have time. Well, I couldn't even make my golden retriever take a seat, right? But sometimes she turned around and did it, 1 minute later, because just out of pity. And so I had a friend in Trier, and another professor actually those days, I was just doing my doctoral studies, and he said, all these guys, they're studying what they don't have, He's studying moral and he's studying that, and I studied power actually. So my dissertation was about the use of power and influence in psychotherapeutic interactions. And I was sitting, in front of my videotapes, and had to do the transcripts. I didn't want to do it anymore. I did it for half a year. I transcribed, I don't know how many hundreds of pages of interactions verbally. But whenever I used the fast forward or the playback of the video recorder, the sound was done, and I could see this kind of strange interaction dance going on, the back lean, forward lean, gesturing, activity goes. I said, oh damn it, there's something in there. That's interesting, more interesting than all this wording. I went to my doctoral supervisor those days, Wolf Minzel, and he was great enough to say, okay, Gary, I can't help you with that, but I see the point. I sent you to Bern to meet Siegfried Frey, and he was a pioneer in nonverbal coding techniques, and so I went there, and this was a turning point in my career, because I was close to university. I said, I don't want it anymore. Clinical psychology, no science in there, and no hard data. I cannot stand it. So actually, this turned around my decision, and I relate that. I like it. So just to give you an overview over, oh yeah, I need sound. I just need sound. Sorry. I forgot about this one here. Let me just go back once, because this is one of the examples you will see of the new tools. It's text-to-speech actually, with an avatar. And the degree of realism that is possible right now, given the new large language models and the animation protocols, that's just amazing. And that's the reason why I could think about continuing a little further, because actually I wasn't believing they're getting there, and now they get there, and I want to be part of it. So, got the sound on? Okay, let me see whether this works.
Hello, everybody. This is the outline of Gary's talk.
So this is really a realistic, guy. Actually, it was easy to do the text-to-speech. It was not that easy to find an avatar of my age group. So so what I'm going to do, I'll give you a short glance into the future. My frustration about avatars and artificial agents. I did reviews for many years, 3 decades, for the European Commission in the area actually of computer science as well. People who are building, so-called, conversational, embodied conversational agents, and they were getting nowhere. And then I look back how I get into all these things. Then I want to give you a conceptual framework, because the perception, the processing of nonverbal cues, we do it every day with such a great ease that we might even think there is no cognitive effort involved, but there is. And there are different areas, levels of cognitive effort that we researched over the last 30 years. Try to figure out, at which points the brain part number 1 takes over, and I talk about this a little more, or number 2, and which kinds of decisions our brain actually makes, what to pick up from the nonverbal behavior and how to process this, and which action to take about what we see. Then I will give you some study examples over these different layers of nonverbal information processing, and in the end we go back to the future and think about how we can address the challenges of today's artificial agents and embodiment. Okay, so that is where I started actually visiting Justine Cassel. Justine Cassel was at MIT those days, and she was one of the leader of this area. She did her real estate agent Rhea, And she was a kind of interactive computer agent, and you could, come in and say, okay, Rhea, I'm looking for a house, and then Rhea said, oh yes, you are looking for a house. I have a house for you. It is a big house. and so on. So I went out there, and I couldn't stop laughing when I went to my hotel. I said, they're getting nowhere, they are nowhere. And then, a few years later, this is now year 2000, and I'm happy now I have the sound. I forgot that I have some sound protocols.
Hello, my name is Dave.
So he has awareness of, in this case, when I hold down the mic, he knows that I'm talking to him. How you doing today? Do you want to say hello to the people here? So you notice he just turned to listen to us.
Nice to meet you. Nice weather, isn't it?
So yeah, so
some others too.
I was actually wondering, what kind of psychological problem this guy has. So is it a clinical study, where you're just trying to, create some kind of impediments of behavior, of communication behavior? So they are nowhere, and we are getting slower there. So the verbal part, I think we solved it. The generative AI is just terrific. And I think over the short run, we will have better models for the nonverbals as well. And I tell you, this is your time. I think if we let this go as a communication science, we are stupid. We should, dive into that. This knowledge is absolutely needed. Whether we need those Mickey Mouses at all, you can debate that. And Joe Walter, if he would be here, said, no way, we don't need it. We can do better without. But we have no choice. They will be there, and the agents will work on problems we have every day. And some of the, just think about how short we are in different consultant areas where you have to call the telephone line and you are, give me number 1, number 2, number 3 until you get to a human. And if you have a kind of first responder buffer of a real, credible, virtual agent, that at certain points could say, okay, I cannot help you further, I connect you to the real one, to the second level support, which these machines do already, then that's a great idea. Just to let you know where I think this goes, and now let's go back and see where I started. That was very different. So I arrived in Bern, and the first thing that Siegfried Frey, my mentor from those days on, showed me was were some experimental manipulations of paintings. I said, oh well, yeah, that's not what I want to do. Okay, he showed me Astronomia. He said, here is a checklist. Just do your ratings, how you perceive this woman on this picture. And I did it, and then he said, now I give you another picture. And he showed me then the protocols of 10 years of students, giving their ratings of these 2 pictures. And this is the other picture, and you will see what changes, how it changes your mind, You have this warm and affiliative person, and here this arrogant, cool, snippy one on the other side, and generations of students, rating that were absolutely consensual that this is a different person, a different attitude, a different personality, maybe even a different emotional state. I said, well, what should I do with that? That's nice, it's super nice, it's impressive, so subtle cues, strong effects, I got it already. I want to see the dynamics, I want to see what's going on in interaction. So he said, yeah, well, now here comes the problem. Because if you want that, you have to do this. You have to sit down and protocol the movement behavior of these people in every detail. And this means, you had an open reel video recorder, 1 frame forward, 1 frame backward, picture changes, head moves from here to here, rotational +1, goes down, sagittal -1, lateral +3. Well, I did my dissertation coding. I think it was I would say 24/7 job for 2 months, but I got it done. And the data richness was just blowing me away after that. Because we had every detail, every subsystem of the nonverbal behavior. And I was kind of, okay, that's where I want to go. At the same moment, I thought, I'll just give you a little overview. Don't take it too much into detail. This is actually a methodological framework that we actually agreed upon, Siegfried and myself. So these were, let me see where the button is. These were the traditional coding, strategies like generic coding, very rough categories, no specificities in the behavior protocol, just sitting, kneeling, standing, or whatsoever. Restrictive coding, counting specific behaviors, leaving out the whole other area of behaviors, and that's the most problematic one, the evaluative coding, translating what you see into a psychological category. So how much affiliation do you see? How much aggression do you see? How much rapport do you see? Well, you know, there might be behavior that causes this impression, but impression and behavior are two things, and that's our credo. Keep these things apart. There is an important part, description, which means you want to have a physicalistic coding. You want to really know what's going on in 3 dimensions, which efforts are going on in which body part. And the evaluation, super important as well, because you want to know what this does to the one who perceives it. So this is a way how you decode a code. Yeah, you want to see what the code writes down, and you want to see what the others make out of it. So that's the credo. And then I said, okay, if this is a physicalistic coding with all this effort and we get all this motion data, if it's really physicalistic, we should be able to do computer animations based on that. This was actually my first animation approach. This was '89, and I had to really develop these little head models, like wireframe models, with typing in my coordinates for the line connections, and then moving this around. And these were the first animation studies, and I did them in the late 90s actually. And then you can base observer ratings on these animations, and you can do an integrated analysis of the behavioral protocols and the perception. So for example, here's a curve where you see how much rapport is rated, and here you see how much mimicry, similarity, postural similarity there, for example. So this is just the framework. So this was actually then the first simulation study, because I was leaving Cologne, Trier, I went to Cologne, and then to Duisburg. And when I arrived in Duisburg, I just, was more into gender differences and nonverbal behavior. This was one of the results. This is highly significant, but I just bring you up pictures. Believe me, enough data to really get the significance out of that. These are eye gaze data of women and men, and this are 3 examples of a very typical structure. Female, much longer gaze at the other's face. So they enable eye contact. Men don't want it so long, so they look away all the time. In the end, the average of eye contact, always about 2.6 to 3 seconds. But the regulation of these short periods is done by the male. And this was throughout the whole protocol. We had 2 exceptions where the women, the female interactor took over the male role, and then you had 2 where you had 2 male roles, but you never had the inverse pattern. I said, well, and this was highly correlated with head rotation. So if you're sitting there and I'm looking at you at a certain point, my eyes looking weird when I'm looking this, so I take the head over. Okay. I said, okay, I can do head animation. So not gaze animation, do head animation. Okay, I did head animation. This is a study of interactions between male and female avatars, if you like. Those days I wasn't able to do full body animation, so I just took some static overlays of the bodies and I put my animations on top. And what I did, I swapped the protocols, so the female behaved in the male way and the male behaved in the female way. Because I thought, yeah, okay, stereotypes, yeah, if they are not fitting the expectations, they will not like it. And so, well, disappointment, or actually I like counterintuitive results. What was coming out, that for the female observers, it didn't really matter what this male did, yeah. They just looked at their conspecific, at the other female, and compared. But for the male observers, we had a strong interaction effect of 2 of our central dimensions, unfriendly, friendly, and attractive, unattractive. And the point is that the male observers liked the female bodies better when they moved in a male way. I said, what the hell is going on? So this is the interesting point that we try to build up on. It's not always about fulfilling the expectations. Sometimes it can be good just not doing it, yeah, being off the road a little bit, being recognizable, and so on. So there's a lot of kind of information in there that's going beyond just methods, which I'm talking mostly about today. Well, you know these ones. Then we had another study going on. It was about the nonverbal behavior of politicians. And we had TV shows of 1 month, US, ABC, NBC, Germany, ZDF, and ARD, France, TF1, Entendu, the big channels, yeah. Coded every single clip where a politician was on screen, like with his time series notation, yeah. And then found some strange things, this big communicators, good communicators, super communicators like Reagan those days, they had this lateral flexion like the little astronomia before. Actually, there was a nice study in Besançon by Montagnier who had kids playing and they had to get the toy from the other kids. And the winners, they never did, give me the toy, they always did, oh, give me the toy. Okay, and then, the hearts melted, these are the communicators. So, and then you had the arrogant ones. This is Gaddafi, actually. This is one of the examples. But the first example was a German one. And he was disliked all over the place. American raiders, German raiders, French raiders. This is the worst ever. Oscar Lafontaine, he was this kind of, terrible. But then also Guido Kempter, my follower-up, who came after me, he took my position in Duisburg. He worked on my animations further on, and let me see whether I can start this. And he did this kind of, very simple puppet animations of the this is Cheshire Harms those days. And then we compared the ratings of the videos, the TV clips, and those of the animations. And what you see here, well, there's some information in there that is not dependent on that you know who it is, which party he is, how he is looking like, how attractive. It's just depending on what they do non-verbally. So again, very encouraging. So, I said the first thing they have to do is make sure that this all really is robust. So if we observe people on a video, is it really the same if we observe the dyadic interaction, for example, as an animation? So and this was already more sophisticated, I used more professional tools for the animation. And you see here, this is the eye tracking going on while they move. And then here you have, this is a little bigger, you can see it better. Let me stop that one here. This is a little slow, the machine. Okay. You see them moving? It's very, very slow. It's slowed down. I don't know what it is. Actually, but this was very realistic movements, and you could really see, the body postures changing. Just let me go back, maybe. Okay, let me do it again. Yeah, it's too slow. You see, it's changing the seating position and so on. So these were it was the quality level we could achieve. And then we looked at the eye gaze data and see whether the perceptions are the same. No, they are not, because the animations had no facial expressions. So what happened, these are actually the circle size is the fixation duration on this area. How long did they look there? The 12 times. How long did they stay there? And then, you see it's mostly on the face and then somehow on the hand. If you switch off the face and you have the animations, it's just half-half. It's shifting down to the hands. The head is still relevant because of the head movement, but the face is gone. And this is just a proportion you spend attentionally on this area. I was like, ooh, ooh, ooh. Probably it's not the same, but it was. These are profiles for one diet. These are actually the means of many diets. And you see that all three, this video, the wireframe model, and the surface model, they show very high similarity levels. And this is actually what we often use. It's a weighted squared difference over the whole profile, the rating profile. So for each item, you use a standard deviation as a weight, and then you sum it up and you get a score of similarity. And the first ones are here, the similarities. If you do a split half in each of the modalities, and this is all the same, and this is actually between modes, the same diet but under different conditions, and you see it's much more closer to here than these different diets and different modalities. That's just exploding. So very promising. So this you saw. What changed? This was 1980 starting. This is 2024. Nothing changed. Actually, the only thing that changed is that here we have more sophisticated methods to measure the nonverbal behavior, which is motion capture. And we have more sophisticated methods to do the animation, which is actually, for example, this is an Unreal 5 output, for example. We have our own programming environment. Here's some suffering people, I know, who know how much work we invest to get there, but it was done actually quite quickly. Huh?
I appreciated seeing how you originally did it every once in a while to remind me I should be very grateful.
Thank you. I'm happy. Yeah. So now I want to give you a conceptual framework. This was all a little bit about methods and showing you whether this works and how. So what you have here is actually 3 layers. They are not independent from each other, but we also know that the 3 layers are really handled differently in the brain. So there are different decisions, different kinds of informations you pull out of the movement of your environment, so to speak, in very general terms, and they are processed differently. So the first instance in social perception is whether this moving object or entity is an intentional being, or if it's just following the gravitation, or if it's just a mechanical being with a machinery like a watch or a robot. And you can already see how important this might be if you are confronted with embodied agents later in a let's say social chat room. Are you talking to a bot, or are you talking to a real person, or are you talking to a mixture of both? So interesting aspect. And there are certain brain areas that take over what we call animacy perception. It's connected to the perception of humanness and so on. So the key question, I put it here, does the perceived entity possess a mind? Just to remind you, there is a philosopher of science, his name is Dennett, and he's talking about the physical stance, the design stance, and the intentional stance. And these are actually the stances I'm being here. The intentional stance is the last step towards, conspecific. Now I have to see what's going on with this person. Yeah, I use my social brain to understand. Physical stance, it's just gravitation, all the kind of Newton laws, yeah, that are happening on something to move it, like a wind or whatever. And the design stance is like that there is a deterministic machinery in there that is creating some more complex behaviors, but still deterministic. And A and B you can explain, but C, the intentional one, we can only understand. We approach the others by our empathetic possibilities, by stepping into the shoes. I don't step into the shoes of a clock watch. I don't step into the shoes of an apple falling. And even a human can fall out of the window. And I would see it more physically than intentionally, but it can also jump. And there's these differences, in how we protocol and process this information. So, second, inferences. Now we have it. Okay, we are in the intentional sense, but what are the intentions? How is the other person feeling? What's coming next? Can I approach? Should I avoid? Is there a positive attitude? And these decisions are made on this level. It's more inferential. And people say often that the mirror neuron system is a system that is taking care of that. And it's about empathy. I will tell you something. Yeah, the mirror system was really based on a monkey grabbing a banana. Yeah, and about knowing that this banana will not be there after one monkey grabbed it. That's important for the other monkey. But I don't see a lot of empathy in there. And we try to distinguish these two systems, and we did it neurally, which I will show you later. So co-regulation, the highest. What's the other state of mind actually? Co-regulation now is about how we perceive nonverbal behaviors and understand or analyze others' nonverbal behaviors in relation to us. So, for example, I change my position, you change your position. I give you a smile, you give me a smile back. How synchronized is that? And synchrony is a dyadic emerging phenomenon. You cannot do synchrony by yourself. You have to do two at the same time, like eye contact. These are dyadic phenomena, and the dyad is the smallest unit of analysis on this layer. And you make test bets. And my idea is, if you have a chat situation on a party, what you say might not matter so much. I love the message, guys. I have to tell you, absolutely, and I think that's a big part of our discipline. But sometimes the message content is not as important. But what is important, that you are able to form a kind of communication unit that creates trust, that makes you wanted to see somebody again, on which you can build. And this is also an important thing with regard to conflict management, because I will tell you later on this layer we did studies on the difference between people who get to know each other, informal, casual, and then we put them in a conflict. What happens to this kind of synchronization was the question. I will show you the data later. So, okay, so these are our minds attuned. That's the question. So let's go. Okay, classification, first step. I always show it because I love it so much. This is an animation, a character animation, but the characters were not humanoid, they were triangles and squares. And this was done in 1954 by Heider and Simmel to show and prove that humans are super prone and keen to see, to explain what's going on, if it's achieving a little complexity, to explain it like if there were an intentional being. Yeah, these are just triangles, and these are just squares. And so, but you say, if you ask people what they see, oh, he's following the other person, and he's afraid, and he's hiding, all these kind of mentalistic terms, yeah, you apply to explain it. So that's what we actually were in, and there are some aspects in there that are, coded in the tempo. Some aspects are coded in pauses of movements, and we did this, and I will go over this very quickly because there are no avatars except, like Robbie Rotan would say, these are avatars as well. Everything can be an avatar that moves like a living being. Okay, I don't go this far. For me, these are just balls, approaching each other. So you see, they are, staying for a moment, and then they're going apart, and the other is just passing by. And people had to determine the humanness of these two, systems, so to speak. What was important for us was actually the time delay that you need. This was the first study, so we saw it's somewhere between 0 and 500 milliseconds. So it needs some time when this, spills over or skips. How would you say? Change the polarity between the physical and the personal stance. So this happens between 0 and 500 milliseconds. So we look closer, it's even so around 200 milliseconds that it happens. So a fifth of a second, and I call this the reflective pause. So if you want to attribute intentionality, that's the point. It might not be absolutely synchronous. It must not be absolutely synchronous. You need this little tiny moment where you can attribute that there was a thinking going on in the one system. Yeah? And it's not such a trivial thing, but it works. And you can really replicate that as often as you want. Then we looked at another parameter, eye gaze, and this was actually what we called, it's a core study for us. It's called the nonverbal Turing test, and it's about contingencies and eye behavior. And when do you think next door is a human or next door is a computer in a just simple eye gaze game? And the eye gaze game was very simple, actually. You look on one side of your screen, you have a crosshair appearing, and then you look into this direction. And the avatar, this is a real-time animation, taking your gaze information, eye tracker, and we also had it in the scanner, and then this avatar is following in a certain proportion of the cases. So either this avatar is always looking in the other direction, or it's always looking in the same direction, or 1 time here, 5 times here, 2 times here, 4 times here, or 3. So different kind of likelihood of followership in the gaze behavior. And actually, this was our assumption that how we, interpret this behavior in terms of humanness, in terms of animacy, depends on whether we know that this system in the other room is helping us, trying to help us. It's a cooperative situation, or it's a competitive situation, or the other is just naive and knows there's a person who's playing with you. In a naive condition, it is actually more this linear trend. So the more often the agent looks into your direction, the more you would say this is human. In the cooperative condition, it's more curvilinear, either never or always in the same direction. So both unlikely event structures cause your humanness attribution. And I think you all have close partners, friends, family. Well, you know, they can do just the opposite of what you do, but it's very meaningful. So there are these contrasting effects in social interactions, but still, you know, doesn't matter. You find your own way to communicate, maybe by just doing always the other thing. It's getting difficult if it's unpredictable. And then you might say, well, no, okay, this might be a machine. So this was really a nice, you know, kind of proof of concept that this is very much into the contingency patterns this other object in our environment responds to us. We replicated that actually in the scanner to see whether different brain parts actually are responsible for processing this information. And actually we recalculated the contrasts for, we didn't look at what really the avatar did, we looked at the attributions, and we aggregated all those who said this was human and those who said this was machine. And then we calculated the contrasts for these two groupings. So we based this analysis of what the people thought, what they said, because we anticipated if they come to this conclusion, the relative part of the brain is doing it, getting them there. And what you actually see, and I don't want to go into much detail, this is actually the computer versus human, and you see more like these areas that are more connected to the mirror neuron system. It's very motor system, premotor cortex, and here you have the ventral striatum and the medial orbifrontal cortex. This is actually known as a mentalizing system, making inferences about others, also emotional interpretations, and the ventral striatum is a reward system. So in the moment of the social attribution, of the humanist attribution, you see the strong reward response, and you see the response of this, what we call mentalizing system. If this is not the case, if it's a machine, you want to understand the clock, yeah? It's more this mechanical understanding, and this is more done by just analyzing the motion patterns. And you have to see which deterministic aspects are in there. You want to understand the rule, the implemented rule. Interesting result. Let's go to the second, the inferences, and this is maybe the point I will talk most about. So now we have this animacy attribution, and yeah, we want to go to the next step. We want to know what we can read out from their movement, from their body movement. And just want to start with a study. I never understood how it could get published in Science. I didn't get it. There are some we don't understand, yeah, right. Okay, and this was about, you know, it was Avesier and Todorov and the group, and they just had tennis players, and they called it peak emotions, and they want to show that not the face, but the body tells you what the people feel. So you can see the peak emotion from the body, not from the face. So they took the faces of winners and losers, and they took the body gestures of winners and losers, and they had people rating, you know, the effects, whether this was a winning or a losing point, and then you see face and body pretty good, but body alone as good as that, face alone very bad, and again, you know, mean intensity ratings very similar, but this here is a hit data where it was published. Well, no dynamics, contextualized gestures, context information in the sense that this is clearly a tennis game, and if you have been to a tennis game, this doesn't work anymore, then you would know that there are ritualized gestures, you know. They don't make a salto like they do in soccer, so, but you can also put a soccer salto in there and say, okay, if you put them in a jersey, yeah, you know what's going on, which game, and that they made the point, yeah. So a lot of, you know, confounds in this study, and in particular, the mix of the what and how. I come to this later. The what and how, I mean with the what and how, that if you observe nonverbal behavior, this will be very relevant for our agents. There is a repertoire of nonverbal gestures that is more like language. You have some conventions, what we show and what we do with our hands. So if you ask somebody, just be happy, they say, yeah, do body posture and so on, yeah? And then there's a how, acceleration of movement, yeah, complexity of movement, all these things that are much more subtle and perceived by another system. So the what and how is exactly what I talked before. These are the different systems that work in movement. So this confound we want to resolve. The first confound we wanted to resolve was the one that you could see that this was a tennis situation, and we just decontextualized expressive emotions by having actors, display happiness and anger. We emotion captured them, stick them in the avatars, and then had a look whether still the body tells you the story. Well, it's a straightforward question. Well, no, you don't. So it's still a little above chance level, but what you see here, these are all the happiness stimuli. There were a few more, and these are the anger stimuli. And 0 means all 100% of people said it's happiness, and 100 means it was a bipolar scale, so it's just percentages, polarized percentages, and this is all anger. So, and you see here in the gray zone, ambiguity like crazy, yeah? Only a few reached really this clear level, so there is uncertainty and ambiguity in this body motion stimuli that you wouldn't believe. But still, we attribute the emotions, and we are super consensual. We say the same, we see the same, they agree, yeah? So what's going on? And we now said, if they don't agree, if every observer is having a different opinion, then this is an ideal data set or stimulus set to give people ambiguous stimuli and look how they disambiguate. What information do you use? And remember, I criticized Avizia and Todorov by saying that they have this contextualized information. And our idea was, yeah, well, that's probably how they do it, If you give them a reason to see the anger, then they will see the anger, yeah? But the reason has to come from different things than from the behavior. So, first of all, we wanted to check on this hypothesis that the high arousal, as Todorov said, is distorting the facial expression, but it's not distorting the body expression. And I said this is only true for photos because the gesture can be nicely captured. A facial expression is very fast and dynamic, so whenever you take a snapshot in between, it can look terrible, yeah? So, and also I said, if this is the case, then you have, and this is very theoretical, the expressionist people in the emotion research, they would tell you that there is an inner, emotion, and this emotion, goes outside. And control means that you suppress the showing. You control it because of cultural rules. So the more intense it gets, the more harder it gets for you to suppress it. The impressionistic view would say, well, no, the control is necessary to really show it the right way. So the control even speaks for, if arousal goes higher, then it gets distorted. So when the arousal is just hindering your control, and then you cannot be as clear in your expression. And if you're not as clear in your expression, the observers would disagree about what they see. Oh yeah, that might be this and that and what everything. So okay, that was the question. Again, we used here a standard deviation as an uncertainty measure in the population. And what you see here is the regression line here. It was a clear, predictor for anger. It was also a little bit for emotion, but you have a strong interaction effect. So it's really, this is a dimension that gets people in the direction of anger. So the activity you perceive, the arousal you perceive, is just, the higher it is, the more you would expect this to be anger. And this is very compatible with the old Watson-Intelligent dimensional models of emotion, but this is on the perception side, and that's an important difference. And actually, we are still working on, maybe there is a priority in our system that doesn't care about emotional labels. It cares about perceived activity and perceived valence. And so we will look into the valence dimension in a minute, and then we respond on it, because the valence and the activity are two vectors that will create affordances in you to show respective behavior. So if you have a negative, high arousal entity, you better run or you decide to fight. If you have a low arousal negative, you might call it sadness, but this is not necessary, because there is this little entity, like a weak and so on, and it creates this affordance to go and help, maybe, yeah? And in the happiness, you just enjoy together. It's just in the middle. You can be excited on Christmas if you get your new roller skates, or you can be more calm, looking at the ocean. You both can be happy, so arousal doesn't matter so much. That's quite evident. So we also again did then a second study where we first of all tried to overcome our own problem in this study, because we had the confound of the what and how as well. We asked the people, show happiness, show anger, so they could do both. Yeah, the what and the how was going into this channel. Yeah. So now we had people. Did we do that? How can you get rid of one of the channels? That was our problem. So what we did, we had, and this is a database we published with over 700 clips. You can all use it. That's freely accessible. We told them, you know what? You do some daily activities. So we plucked the what channel by giving them something to do. So do some pruning and some brushing and some painting, and they had them, motion captured, and they had to do it in a sad, a happy, and an angry condition. So we just left one aspect of the nonverbal open for variation, and this was the dynamics, like acceleration and velocity and all these things. So the subtle channels. So these are then the channels, and then we had, the first study was actually just to validate whether our systems still work the same way, and we had here activity when they had to judge the activity, the contrast activity versus mood, and then the other group had to judge mood versus activity, and then what you see here is again this classical layers that are more like connected to the mirror neuron system to just motion analysis in the sense, where does it go, where does it end, what dynamics are in the motion, and here you have more the mood versus activity contrast, where the mentalizing system really pops up, the TPG as well, so the classical traditional suspects. Well, then we looked at the predictions, and you see here what we expected. Just to let you know again, it's just doubling up a little bit. These are the regression models for angriness. You have arousal and valence as predictors. In the happiness, you have just valence, and for sadness, you have inverse to anger. It's really the inverse. You have the negative predictors for arousal and valence. So these are basic decisions your brain does on two simple dimensions. And then you give them names, the emotions, and you give them names. Why? Because maybe it's contextualized. So we said, what can be a contextualizing factor for attributing emotions? And there is a lot of research in the minimal group paradigm or in in-group, out-group paradigms like Taschfeld and all these generations, Anderson, that were working with that. I said, yeah, let's try. So first was a minimal group paradigm. So you get a jersey when you come in as a participant, green or blue, and then we randomly assign you to the in-group or out-group situation, and then we show you anger, happiness, and joy. And the idea was, there is an out-group bias. If you see the out-group, you're going for angry because there is a negative bias, which was actually not the case. And then we also tried to do it to culturally stereotype it, in-group, out-group, and we did this study in the Arab Emirates and in Germany to watch these two same movements. Actually, you can see this is how they approach the camera then. Okay, surprise, surprise. In this paradigm, in the minimal group paradigm, the out-group just doesn't matter. We didn't succeed in getting the out-group salient for you. The only thing that was salient was, okay, what's going on with my in-group? So they compared or analyzed what the in-group does. And there you have the negativity bias that, they were most critical about, aspects of arousal, and they attributed the anger to this group. And another interesting result, I just go a little bit quicker over it so we have time for discussion as well, was in the cross-cultural comparison. What you would expect is, that if the culture of the avatar is European, the Europeans would probably create this split, that the anger expression is seen more often in the display than the happiness expression. And if it's, the out-group avatar, you would see it, the in-group avatar, you would see it as doesn't matter. But you would see the same, you would expect opposite for UAE, because in-group and out-group is swapped. But we saw the same result. So can you have a look at the avatars, and can you give me an idea why you think this was not, as we expected, interaction effect? Why it didn't flip? Why did Arabs and Germans agree that the German avatar was always more angry than the Arab avatar?
Maybe there was no stretch on our
There was no animation in the face, but you are right. It's just the appearance, yeah, and probably the facial experience. So this looked like a bad German hooligan, and this looked like a friendly Arab gentleman, yeah. So I just bring this up because this means that appearance of the avatars, even if we do well with nonverbal, if their appearance gives you a twist in one direction, you might kill your effect. So just to sensitize you for that. Yeah, last co-regulation, this is what we actually do right now. This is about synchrony and coordination, and I have to tell you that how should I say? I'm frustrated about how synchrony research developed over the last 2 decades. It's a completely diluted concept, meanwhile. We were starting out with straightforward definitions, like synchrony is happening between weakly coupled oscillators, so there must be recoupling, that can be communication, and there must be oscillation, some rhythmic behaviors. If we have a conversation, where is the rhythm? Is there a rhythm? And so, well, you don't see it, it's not as evident. So, and different algorithms were applied, which I think measure different things. There are frequency-based analysis, there are time-based analysis, there are space-based analysis, and I will just hop over and then go to the space-based one, which is maybe the most impressive one. This is a frequency-based analysis where we had our motion capture data of 132 interactions, 66 dyads in a conflict situation, and in a get-to-know interaction. So they come in, get to know each other, friendly, try to align with each other, and then we give them a conflict scenario. And we wanted to know how much the synchrony changes, because there is a basic question still in our field. Is synchrony just an epiphenomenon of some other things? An epiphenomenon? Or is it some functional parameter in overcoming even conflict? In the first case, it should break down if you bring them in conflict. In the second case, it could even be increased and to try to get over it. So actually what's happening, it's breaking down. And this is frequency-based analysis. It's called cross-wavelet coherence, and you have different frequency bands, and you can see that in the different areas of the motion, particular head movement, you see the significant differences between the situations, horizontal and vertical head movement. You can see it here. These are the coherence patterns in this faster frequency bands upper here, and one in the lower here. And you see in the conflict situations, actually this rhythmic alignment goes off. And then we also looked at the temporal alignment in the time dimension, which is more like looking at how much are the activity patterns, my activity burst and your activity burst, my gestural activity and yours, how are they actually aligned over time? And this is just time lag cross correlation. So you have the time lag here from plus to minus 5 seconds, you have the observation time here, and then you look at each point in time, you look back 5 seconds and forward 5 seconds, and you look how much then these parameters correlate. Yeah, in this case, it was also the head movement behavior, and you see that this is a zero lag, and then off from the zero lag, you see here the higher correlations. This is red, and here you have again the zero lag, and then you have here an analysis that shows you how far away from the zero offset the lag actually of the optimal correlation is, and the closer it is, the more attuned are the systems. And in fact, you see most of the parameters show significant differences. It collapses in conflict. Very frustrating to some degree if you want to really talk about synchrony as a mechanism of rapport. Thank you. I think we should say bye-bye or change the parameter. So last data is about spatial analysis of mimicry, of postural similarity. And actually, this little animation shows you how we do that. You have two interactors. This is our classical computer animation. And then you can tell the computer animation to just move one person over into the chair of the other person, put them in the same spot. Yeah? And from then on, you can just calculate the differences between all the joints. Your left arm, my left arm, and you get just an aggregate pattern of spatial similarity over time. And these parameters then you can analyze, and if you look into the analysis, you see that this is actually a pattern that the dyads keep over the two situations. You align once, you find your way to establish the balance, but one parameter also shows significant differences, and this is actually the standard deviation within the similarity time series, which means that in conflict, let's go the other way around. If you got to know somebody, it's a relaxed casual interaction. You find a kind of resting state that is kind of also calm. You're not hectic, you know, you're okay. You're watching each other, you have a chit chat or whatsoever. When the conflict comes in, the system states explode. So you have many more different system states. If ideally you find attractors even, so different, you know, kind of metastable system states, but we just found, you know, that it's exploding and that the system states just, you know, here increase a lot, you know, significantly from the casual interaction. So evidently you're looking for different ways to resynchronize or restabilize. And the problem with our data is they were very short, like 3-5 minutes. So I think next time you should give them half an hour to really find their ways back into synchrony. And this might be the critical point in these kinds of studies. So, well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe coming back to the last point again. So why does it matter? Yeah, for these avatars and agents. Well, I told already. Challenge implementing realistic face-gaze body motion. We can do that already, but making it interactive is important. Avoiding uncanny valley effects. You heard about that. You know, the closer you get to reality, the more critical the observer gets. Yeah. Then evaluating states of minds. We have to implement encoding and decoding layers for expressive behavior. So it doesn't, you know, if they can show emotions, but they don't really respond to the affordances we create, we are not in good shape. And the last one would be enabling socially adaptive, interpersonally contingent nonverbal behaviors. So avatars, agents that look at what we do and assimilate to some degree with a certain variance. And these are all research tasks to find out the optimum. And I tell you, this is your time, and go for it. I think we can do a great job. So,
Thank you for your attention.